Welcome to our program, Coach-to-Coach. Today's guest is Ian Russell. For Ian's introduction, I thought I'd borrow a few lines from Ian's document. Ian is an eternal spring of crystal clear joy, sourced from the depths of the well of profound stillness which bubbles up through him to quench the thirst of those in need. Ian is the phoenix arisen from the ashes to share his gifts to the world, with the world. Ian is that he shows up as a pure expression of love in the world, as a mirror pointing others to the truth of their being. Love is, and Ian is that, and Ian is Magic Ian. Thanks for joining us today, Ian. It's my pleasure to welcome you to Coach-to-Coach.
Well, thank you, Greg. It's an absolute delight and pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so the way I like to start these off is to ask what first sparked your interest in coaching?
Well, I've had a lifetime of interest in helping people, I suppose. I worked all my life as a forensic psychiatrist um, in a variety of settings. And then my own interest and curiosity in more deep work, I suppose, involved me lying on the couch 3 or 4 times a week in an in-depth Jungian analysis for 18 years. I then came across the three principles about 6 years ago, and in the context of that, found myself, along with you and many others, in Jamie Smart's Inner World. And in the context of that, I quickly discovered and learned quite a lot about coaching. And initially, my introduction to that really was in being coached. And I had the absolute pleasure, as you know, of spending a year being coached by Jamie in an unusual experiment in which I was coached and a group of other coaches got to bear witness to me being coached. And that was then unpacked by Jamie for the coaches. And I know, because I've spoken to many of you, that was profoundly transformational, not only for me as the person being coached, but everybody who had the privilege of witnessing quite literally a series of miracles. And then in the context of that, Jamie wanted me to do his clarity coach training. And so I was happy to do that, then started just some peer-to-peer coaching and loved that, and quickly began to realize, actually, although I retired from working 9 years ago after a profound sort of death experience when I was in a coma, coming out of retirement to actually start to work as a coach made more and more sense. And for the last year or 18 months, that's exactly what I've been doing, working as a part-time professional, transformational, 3P inspired life coach.
Amazing. Yeah, that experience you described of being in Jamie's one-to-one coaching unpack program. I mean, me in there as an observer, signing up, I'd say mainly for the purpose of learning how to coach. How does this one-to-one coaching thing work? How do you um, handle a client through an intensive, through a whole year? Like that was my going in thing. And I did learn a lot and gain a lot of benefits in that respect. But like you indicated, the more impactful part for me was just um, you know my own transformations that occurred as a result of observing and watching it. It's funny. I'm sure you've had these experiences too, watching Jamie coach other people. It's like some kind of strange third party effect that just being present while somebody else is being coached, whether what you're dealing with relates directly to what they're being coached on or not. You have insights. You see things that you otherwise wouldn't see. It's just being in that space with people. So it
I
was
think
an
that's so
amazing
true, Greg.
experience.
Yeah, I think both from the scenario you described, but also my own experience of that, when a coach and a client are deeply engaged and in what Jamie describes as an insight-friendly space, the ripples of that, the impact on anybody listening to that should not be underestimated.
Mm.
And I'm not at all surprised. I am delighted, but not surprised of the impact it had on so many people, particularly yourself, who really did justice to what was on offer and actually, attended pretty much all of it and really engaged with it. And, the more you feel into a space like that, the more we see, the more insights we're likely to have for ourselves.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, it was one of those weekly tasks in my diary that I eagerly anticipated every week getting on those calls. And I'm very curious by nature. So the fact that the way Jamie ran the unpacking was user led, if it was, he didn't direct it at all. It was, you had to ask questions to get answers. And myself and another guy, Craig Forrester, we basically took our turns bombarding Jamie with every question we could think of.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was great. So I'm curious about this coaching practice that you've kind of, I guess, wandered into as you described how you got there in terms of how you're working. You mentioned the three principles based part of it. Maybe you talk about to that a little bit, and then just how you're working and who you're working with. If you have kind of a profile of clients you're looking for, or the type of people that just seem to find their way to you.
Well, the very first client I ever got was a couple of years ago, definitely before I had any intentions of being a coach at all. And it was somebody I knew from the coaching world from a couple of years before. And they reached out to me and basically said to me, Ian, the universe says you should be my coach. What have you got to say about that? And I'm like, yeah, okay, I could do that. And that's how I created my first client. And the scenarios since are not quite as unusual as that, but they often follow a very well. There isn't a script, there isn't a pattern. They tend to be very much intuitively led. People I will meet or people's names will come into my head that I connect with, and we have a conversation, and things tend to spark from there. I don't have a particular client type. I'm very happy to work with anybody. I've worked with people, from the age of 20 odd upwards into their 60s. Happy to work with men or women. Um, it tends to be more what matters to me is the connection between the two people. Is there a good fit? Is it something both people want to do? Is
Mm,
somebody looking for a coach? Is the first question. And if they are, am I, somebody that they would be interested in working with? And if those criteria are met, the rest of it then can usually be worked out. I am deeply grounded in the principles, and you shared a line from my document which really says it all. Um, I do see myself as a mirror pointing others to the truth of their being, pointing people to their spiritual nature. And I think if there is one common theme amongst my clients and people I'm in conversation with at the moment, it is often a deep curiosity in exploring their spiritual nature, whatever that means.
mm,
It has been the driving force in my own life for 45, 50 years, ever since I was a kid, really, understanding what it is to be human. And I continue to love and enjoy exploring that with other people. Of course, in the coaching world, anything and everything comes up. And my background in the forensic world and my background as a psychiatrist, I think, does afford me a tremendous depth of experience of areas I'm prepared to look in.
mm,
There aren't any rocks and nooks and crannies that I shy away from. I've seen a lot of dark things at times, and I've explored a lot of interesting areas in myself. And I'm very happy to explore that with another person if they want to go there. So I think that's a rich part of what I do. Um, I like to work with a lot of fun and lightheartedness. I think that matters greatly to me. But I'm, like many people, guided by what shows up, by the person in front of me. Um, and one of the biggest things I got from my coaching with Jamie was the realization of the size of the miracle that's on offer in coaching. You know, I thought, something like this might be possible for me. I think when it began, I kind of thought, yeah, I believe in miracles, but for everybody else in the world, but not me.
Mhm.
And then in time, it's like, well, maybe some miracles are possible. And then in time, the miracles got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I love, when I meet somebody, seeing what they present with, but then just getting curious and wondering about actually what might be possible for this person.
Yeah, I think you've described kind of the scenario I come across all the time with my clients is a much more narrow view of what's possible is kind of their starting point. Um, and me too. I mean, I mean, you don't know what you don't know, I guess, until you get a glimpse of it. And it's interesting because the if I think back to my life, to 5 years ago or so, 5 or 6 years ago when I started all this, throwing around the world miracle um, wouldn't have been in my in my wheelhouse, and now it is. So that in itself, I think, is a bit of a miracle.
I think the other area, Greg, that I should mention, I mean, you began by sharing some lines from my document that resonated for you. Um, I completed my document just around Christmas time, just before Christmas last year. And I thought my grounding in the principles was all I needed in life. And make no mistake, it serves me very powerfully. But I continue to be blown away by the impact having a document, living into my document, living and breathing my document, the value that brings to me and to my clients. And something I've started doing in the last few months is actually creating documents with people. And, if you'd asked me that 4 or 5 months ago, I would have been like, oh, document, somebody else can. I'm not qualified to help people. And I see the madness in that now. You know, there's no area of my life that I've mentioned or areas of human experience I'm not prepared to visit, no area of judgment. And having done that so deeply myself and with my background, I can't think of a better CV to help other human beings when they're ready, if they're curious, to explore the truth of who they really are.
Mm,
And that at heart is what the document is and offers. And it's been so rich and valuable to me. I do like to offer that to people if it's again something they're curious about.
mm, yeah, about that. It's funny you said. I think you said I completed my document before Christmas, and what came to my mind was, uh, you know, you completed the writing of your document or the creation of your document, but that was the start of living your document. I suppose is another way to
Very
think
much
about
so.
it. Yeah.
Oh, no, 100%. Not to be underestimated. Creating a document of itself is, no small undertaking, and it can be challenging at times as well as very rewarding. But it is then the embodiment and the living into that is where the real work begins and the real rewards and the real gold lie.
Mm. In that vein, I'm curious. Just that last line that I read, "Magic Ian." I'm curious of, in the 6 or 7 months since you completed writing your document, what is being Magic Ian? How's that shown up in the world?
Well, I wouldn't want it to be lost on anybody listening to this. Of course, Magic Ian is magician,
Mm,
and part of how I see that is quite literally how I weave magic and create miracles in the world. Now, they're going to vary from person to person, and we could talk for a long time about miracles beyond the scope of today's conversation. But in many ways, it seems to me, as Einstein puts it, everything is a miracle and nothing is a miracle. But miracles are truly all around us. What coaching, I think, affords the opportunity to do is perhaps help people notice those. And they can be small things, sometimes they can be bigger things. And I, a client I'm working with at the moment who knew nothing about the principles before we started working together. And he's a very diligent, very studious man who always very curious about things. And I shared some resources with him, some Sid Banks recordings to listen to, a couple of books I suggested he read. And then one day he was just sat quietly and had a deeply profound sort of spiritual experience. He really dropped into that insight friendly space. His mind quietened and he saw something. It's those kinds of experiences that light me up, and I don't think I would ever get tired of pointing people to the truth of who we
Mm.
really are, helping people to slow down, to get quiet, and to live more beautiful lives as a result. And similarly, helping people to create documents, helping people to suddenly let go of some of the judgments they have about themselves, to identify what is more true for themselves and of themselves, and then pulling it all together to enrich their lives.
Mm. Beautiful. I'm going to tell myself I hadn't realized that Magic Ian was magician, so thank you for that. As soon as you said it, it's like so obvious.
Well, we can thank our mutual friend Bloom de Wild for that.
Mm. Yeah.
It's a gift from her.
Nice.
I'd never seen it in my life either, Greg. That's news
Yeah.
for you. 9 months ago, I'd never made the connection either until it's like, yep,
Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah.
And I have a long background of a colourful family where I had an uncle Bob who was a purple wizard and would be out there with his dowsing rods and his crystals and his tarot cards, reading people's fortunes. And but I grew up with this, magic and the extraordinary was just part of the world I knew.
Mm.
Always was, and probably always will be.
Yeah. I can imagine, growing up with an Uncle Bob, did you say his name was?
Uncle Bob.
Uncle Bob, that, as a kid, you would just assume like everyone's got an Uncle Bob, don't they? Like,
Yeah,
because that's just, we all always assume that everyone's life is kind of like our own. Um, and I don't know, I'm trying to think to one degree or another, everyone probably does have an Uncle Bob, a different style or flavor or whatever, but
absolutely.
yeah. I'm curious if you can share one or two examples of how coaching has either helped yourself or a client, whether it's a particular insight or transformation or just seeing something new just so the audience can relate to or see themselves kind of in some of these stories and go, oh yeah, maybe coaching is for me.
Well, I've spoken quite a bit about my relationship with Jamie, and that seems the obvious place for me to start. Um, as of 2 years ago or so, I weighed maybe 30 kilos more than I weigh now. Despite my health concerns and the changes I had made in my life, I was still ignoring my physical body. I still had a less than ideal relationship with it. And part of literally the miracle that took place in my work with Jamie was to create a different relationship with my physical form. I lost a lot of weight. I got a lot healthier, started going to the gym. And I can remember very clearly the insight that shifted that. I'd heard this before, I think from Sid Banks, but certainly from the principles world. And it said, you can have anything you want in life, but you have to really want it. And I didn't realize the significance of that at the time until all of a sudden getting healthy, losing the weight, truly wanting to live a long, healthy, productive life mattered to me more than anything else in the world. And when I saw that, when I had that insight, I wouldn't say it made losing the weight easy, but it certainly made it make sense and it made it easier. Another insight I had last year, which also is in my document, sounds at first glance really simple. And it simply says, it's like a message from the universe, we could say. It said, Ian, all that's required of you is to show up and to be unapologetically your true, authentic self. And I'm like, I can do that.
Mm.
I can show up. I can be me. Most of the time, I can do that unapologetically. Okay, sometimes I get caught up in some thinking about that. Who am I being? Am I too much? And then I remember my document. I remember my document, which begins, I am all that is. And if I am a divine spark of God, we could say, how can I possibly be too much in the world or not enough? And what again, speaking more about the document than I realize, whenever I lose sight of the truth of who I am, whenever I innocently get caught up in my thinking or in my head, I remind myself of lines from my document of who I really am. And as Jamie always shared, the two things a person can most usefully know. One of them is the truth of who we really are. And for me, that was always of paramount importance. And the second is the nature of how thought creates our reality. Understanding those two things continues to serve me and my clients very powerfully.
Mm. I was talking to, I think it was Igor, about the document or process and what it is and how it works and all that kind of thing. And the thing that occurred to me was um, it relates very directly to what you just said about uh, understanding how our experience is created using the principle of thought to create our experience. That the document is kind of used as a tool to um, I don't know, guide us or point us in a direction of conscious creation that we've landed on for ourselves. And it's like a way to help focus our use of the principle of thought in the direction that we consciously want to create. So to me, the two things tie together very, very nicely.
Very much so. I mean, the thing about our new document, we could say that we can consciously create is that we all have old documents in play,
Mm,
stories and ideas that we inherit. We're born into this world, as far as I can tell, as a blank canvas, as an innocent baby. And along the way, we pick up stories and ideas from parents and teachers and siblings and religion and social media about who we are and who we are not. And very often they really don't serve us.
mm,
It's an invitation to create something much more true that serves us more powerfully now. And I often describe it in this way. It seems to me, therefore, I can stack the deck in my favor.
mm,
I can feed my system with the good stuff. I can feed my system with what is more true, which is back to the truth of who we really are.
mm,
And I'm unashamed about that. If I can stack the deck in my favor, why the hell wouldn't I do that?
mm,
You know? And That's where I think it adds something for me, even beyond my understanding of the principles, understanding the truth of who we are, the principles, and how they create reality through the power of thought, and having a document.
Mm,
It's a very powerful way to be in the world.
mm. Absolutely. I think it's a great point you make too about whether we know it or not, we have a document. And I think there's something powerful too about realizing that for yourself, and that so because it's not a matter of whether you have a document or not. It's a matter of whether you want to have a consciously created document or a default, you know, circumstance handed you this document and you're living from it. Um, so, and then we can choose. The other thing that occurred to me, back to relating to the idea of miracles and stuff, is, um, I'll speak for myself. There's many things in my life where I said, well, I kind of like labeled something as a miracle. It would need a miracle for that to change, as a way of kind of dismissing it or putting it in a category of impossible. Um, like my relationship to what a miracle was a way of dismissing something, because if I labeled it as a requiring a miracle, then I didn't have to worry about it because it was not even possible. And now my relationship with the miracles is like, oh no, miracles are on offer. So it's, those are, uh, that doesn't work anymore for me in terms of ignoring something or dismissing it, because I've seen and experienced uh, miracles myself. So very cool. I'm curious if you had to whittle all this down to one thing that you'd want people to take away from this conversation, what would that one thing be?
Or one thing. Hmm. It would be pointing people. There's another line in my document that says, I am kind and compassionate to all, including myself, no matter what the external circumstances appear to be, including myself. And it seems to me that as long as we have a brain that functions, which is a wonderful thing, brains are thought generating machines, and a flavor of thoughts that they generate are judgments. Whether you've got a document or not, brains keep on generating judgments. And when they pop up, that's okay. Be kind and compassionate to yourself, to myself. Forgive myself for the fact that I've got a functioning brain and a judgment has shown up. I can catch that as soon as I can catch it. And when I do, I can choose a different thought. And I think if people were kinder and compassionate to others, of course, that would be wonderful. But actually, our own harshest critic is nearly always ourselves. What in other language might be called a harsh superego, or that voice that just sort of sits on your shoulder being hypercritical of everything you say and do. It doesn't help, in my opinion. And we can't sit in judgment and in love. So choose love. There's a reason my document ends. Love is, and I am that, and I am Magic Ian. Because love to me is what Sid always pointed to, love and understanding. And the more deeply we see that, the more beautiful life tends to be.
if people are interested in getting in touch with you, either for coaching or to work on their document or just to connect, where's the best place for them to find you?
I'm always delighted to have conversations with people. I don't have a website. My email address is Ian, IAN, Dig, DIGR. So Ian Digr at AOL.com. I am on Facebook and I am on Instagram, and people will find me on either of those platforms.
So I've enjoyed sharing this time with you and this space with you. Probably long overdue, but yeah, I always enjoy being in your company. So thanks for doing this.
It's been my pleasure, Greg. The timing is right because it's now.
Absolutely. All right. We'll see you soon.
All right.